I talked to all of my friends and people, like, Chris, you'd be a great dad. Once they're here, you're going to love them, and you're never going to know this type of love, right? And every time somebody says that to me, without a doubt, the first thing I always think of is that's not really true.
Yeah.
Like, I have a biological dad that wants zero to do with me. Mm-hmm. And yes, my biological mom, she loves me, but she still put me up for adoption, right?
Right.
And so I think I was really, really scared. Actually, I know I was really, really scared of having this person and then just really resenting them for even being there.
I'm Megan Armstrong. Welcome to Life 6 Feet Above. 6 Feet Above was created when I started to share my story of spending 16 years wanting to be 6 feet under to now living a life full and happy 6 feet above. The more that I started to talk about my journey, my struggles, and my past, the more I realized people were genuinely interested and not judgmental at all, which is what I'd feared for so long. In fact, other people wanted to talk about their story as well, and for some reason they trusted me to do so. So the 6 Feet Above podcast is my way of helping to share other people's stories, finding out what works for them to create a life of happiness. Before we start this episode, I want to let you know it has some explicit language and some very serious subject matter. It may be triggering or sensitive to certain people. Please listen with discretion. This is Chris's story. So episode 17, I'm so excited to be joined by a friend of mine, Chris Thompson, who oddly enough, I didn't meet through fitness. Pretty much every other guest I've met through the fitness community. And Chris and I go back a couple years now. We met through a mutual friend and we kind of just hit it off because I think we're very similar in a lot of ways as far as kind of what we've been through with our mental health and our journey, but also very, very different. Would you say that's an accurate description?
Yeah, I definitely came over on a boat, so I think that getting to America was a little bit different, for you than it was for me. But
so the people can't see you, so explain what that means.
I'm probably the only person that you'll ever meet that is Asian with a Southern accent, actually.
Where are you originally from then?
So I was born in Seoul, South Korea.
Okay.
And then I stayed over there for about 2 years. Uh-huh. And some of that time was spent in an orphanage, actually. Okay. And then I was lucky enough to be adopted. And so flew in, didn't really come in on a boat, but I flew in and got here. I had just turned 2. I was about 2 years, 3 weeks.
Really?
Yeah. And so had some great Caucasian parents.
Yeah.
And that's kind of just where I kind of was born and how I got here.
So we'll jump into more about the adoption and what it's like, to go through that process. But let's just start from, kind of growing up in the U.S. You're from Mississippi, rural town in Mississippi?
Yes.
Where?
I grew up in Meridian, Mississippi. It's a town of about 39,000 people, uh-huh. And the majority of that is actually military. So interesting enough, I was literally the only Asian kid that I can think of growing up. We definitely had some nail salons and some Chinese food type restaurants in my town, but I was the only kid in my high school and things growing up. And so definitely kind of aware of the environment that I was in.
Right. So let me ask you this. Do you have, for the sake of this podcast, your mom and dad are your adoptive parents? We're just going to say that, right? Because that's really who you consider your parents.
Correct.
So did they have any other children at the time? Did they adopt any other children? Were you an only child?
Yeah, so my dad was married before and had another child. He's probably about 10 years older than I am. Okay. But we didn't have a lot of contact. So essentially growing up, I was an only child. Didn't talk to David very much at all. And so even to this day, he could walk in the door and I actually wouldn't know who he was.
You wouldn't know who he was?
Yeah. We're not even friends on Facebook, if that says anything.
It does say a lot, actually. So your dad was married before and then remarried to your mom. Do you know why they decided to adopt?
Yeah, so my dad is a Vietnam vet,
Okay.
and so he spent a lot of time over in the Asian countries, whether it was Korea, Vietnam, or on an aircraft carrier. Unfortunately, my mom was in an accident when she was around 5 years old, and it just really kind of damaged some of the reproductive organs, and she couldn't have children, and so it was something she always had dreamed of. And so when she met my dad, they had already discussed it during the dating phase,
Right.
and they were both on board. And so, lucky enough, they flipped through the catalog and landed on me.
So what's that process like? Like, how does it even begin? Have you talked to them about the whole process of, finding you?
Yeah. So my dad really loved the area over there. And I think kind of his experiences through Vietnam, seeing some of the orphan children, it really affected him when he came home. And so he really wanted to kind of focus in on that area specifically. Holt International is a adoption agency. It's actually my adoption agency, but something that I try to support.
Did you say Hope International?
Holt, H-O-L-T.
H-O-L-T.
Holt,
Okay.
yes. And so they have a really good footprint in the Asian countries. And so, but it also has a religious kind of background. And so that's where my mom kind of just chose that adoption agency for us, or for my dad.
Okay.
And so, then they just started kind of going through all the interview process, paying all the money. And I kind of kid about this whole it's a catalog. But back then it really kind of was.
Really? Like they send pictures? And...
think JCPenney catalog, like back in the 80s, or an East Bay or a LL Bean. Like there really is, or there really was a catalog of children. And you would go through and you would kind of just almost shop, for example. And so my mom, the smart lady that she was, definitely didn't want the whole potty training thing, so she skipped ahead 2 years in the process, and I just turned 2.
And they had wanted a boy, girl, or did it not matter?
My mom wanted a boy.
Okay.
They just kind of went through the process. It's really kind of miraculous that there's so many kids to choose from. They didn't realize how hard it was actually going to be, but kind of selecting the age range really helped them, because younger children, specifically babies, they have a higher adoption rate, and there's a more demand for them.
Sure.
And so kind of skipping up a couple of years expedited the process so they could get me sooner and start that journey together. So.
And this is how many years ago? So you're 30. How old are you now?
I didn't think it was going to be like this deep.
You're going to have to do some math.
I actually have to put my age out there for everyone. So I'm 37.
Okay. So 35 years ago.
So I was, my parents picked me up on February 3rd, 1985.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Wow. So did they picked you up from where? Like, where do you fly into? So many questions. I have so many random questions for you.
Yeah. So I flew into a blizzard in Memphis, Tennessee, of all places. Yeah. My dad had literally been my father for about 90 minutes. It's a funny story. They said that I was crying the entire time, being handed over to strangers, obviously.
I'm sure.
But it had been snowing, and so it took them hours upon hours to drive from Meridian there. It's about a 6-hour drive for them.
Okay.
It took them like 12 to get there because of icy roads, some wrecks and stuff. But my dad walked out with me, holding me, and he actually slipped on a piece of ice. And so he just kind of grabbed me really tight, and he fell backwards and just fell flat on his back. Aww. But apparently I thought it was the greatest ride ever, because at that point I just stopped laughing and I started laughing. And my dad dropped me basically 90 minutes into having me.
So he literally broke the ice, right? No pun intended.
He broke the ice. That's funny. And also, might explain a couple of things about me.
Some other stuff about you we'll get into later. Do you remember your given name?
Yes, it's An Sung Jin.
Do you know what that means?
No clue.
Okay.
Not a clue. I have it just from my Korean kind of like quasi birth certificate.
Right. And then did they rename you before you came over, or after, or
afterwards?
How does that process work?
Yeah. So it's international adoptions. It's actually, even to this day, there's a lot of finer details that you have to go through that you don't really think of when like adopting someone domestically.
Right.
I mean, the we had to create a birth certificate for me in the United States. I was, this is kind of a funny story. I was actually the youngest person to gain citizenship in the state of Mississippi for the longest time.
Really?
Yeah. I was in 4th grade, but I was a legal alien all the way from 2 years old to 4th grade, about 9.
Yeah.
Yeah, like we had to create a social security number for me, had to create a birth certificate, just kind of make up some things, like the time I was born, because some of that information wasn't transferred over when I came over.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, there was a lot of kind of like finer details that had to be in place for me to succeed.
And do you remember any of this? I mean, some people swear they remember when they were like babies, and one like, I don't remember anything, but
I don't know if I've just kind of created this image in my head, but I do remember like the ocean and just kind of like glaring light up from the sun. And I just don't know where that image really came from. And I just really think that it was me flying over, and I just looked out on the water, and it was just something that was so kind of like awe-inspiring. It's just stuck with me. I don't know why that vision is still with me. I can't 100% say that's my first memory, but it's something that I've remembered since I can remember.
Right. Yeah. So your birth mother, have you ever talked to her? Do you know who she is? I mean, is there any relationship with her? Is she still alive? All the things. Tell me all the things.
We're Facebook friends.
You are not.
We are.
Are you really?
Yeah. If you ever see like a random like bunch of Korean symbols, like a picture, it's probably one of my biological relatives.
That's your birth mom?
Yeah. Yeah. My birth mom or one of my brothers.
So did she reach out to you years later, or did you reach out to her?
No. So I'm not trying to skip ahead or anything, but when I was married, the kid conversation obviously came up a little bit, and I really wanted to have a stronger understanding of just some of the history of my family and just some of the kind of genetics and things like that. Was if I had a child, would they have any type of conditions, potentially something I could pass down? And so that's when I really started my search. Okay. I reached out to Holt International and asked to get as much information as I can. My biological mom, it was kind of great. She actually made it an open adoption for me, so I could anytime that I wanted to come find them, it'd be easier. And from my understanding, she literally went every year and updated all of her contact information in the event that I ever wanted to do it. Really? So I didn't start this process until I was kind of mid-20s. Okay. And so that's about 23 years that she would go back and update contact information in the event that I ever wanted to come and find them. And so, I just went through all the paperwork, and then they reached out to me and said, hey, this is the information. What we will do is if you write a letter, send it to us, we'll translate it, and then we will mail it along. And so I did that entire thing. I wrote the letter, I mailed it, and then, I don't know, probably like 2 months maybe went by, and I got a letter back.
From her,
translated over. And it was pretty overwhelming at the time. So I actually stopped the process at that point.
Just too much?
Just too much. Yeah. I didn't know how to feel about it at the time. It was too much. And so it almost took like a year for me to process everything. Yeah. And so...
Did she explain in that letter what happened and why she gave you up for adoption?
Not so much in the letter, but she did tell me about the day that she dropped me off for adoption. Apparently, she got me up, got me dressed, and I blame her for my being obese. But she said I loved ice cream.
Anything but obese. He's such a liar. As you're wearing a Jenny's ice cream hat.
Yes, exactly. She said that I loved ice cream as a child. And so she got me up. We went and got ice cream. And she took me to the adoption agency. She had already filled out everything, and she kind of left me there. And she said, I started crying, kind of dropped the ice cream, was running after her, and she just had to kind of run away. And in the letter, she said that she still doesn't eat ice cream because it brings back so many bad memories. And that was a little tough to read because it wasn't, I don't know what I was expecting, but it wasn't something, heartfelt or I guess that traumatic for me. So stopped the process. And then I picked it up again a year later when I was a little bit kind of more emotionally prepared for it. Yeah. And so sent another letter, apologize for the delay in getting back, but just that it was a lot.
Yeah.
And I believe that God works in some kind of miraculous ways. My really good friend Philip, we were college roommates all the way through, basically. He was in my wedding, I was in his, and he actually decided he was going to move to Korea and teach English just randomly. And so he had been living over there for about 2 years at this time. And so it was really great to have him over there, because I flew to meet them, and I had like a little bit of a support system at the time.
Wait, you flew to meet your mom?
Mm-hmm.
Really?
Yes, yeah. So I flew into Seoul. I walked into the agency. She walked in a little bit later. They provided a really great translator, someone that had kind of spent a lot of time in the States.
Okay.
So really understood some of the nuance of our language.
Yeah.
And she walked in, and it was just weird, She I didn't know,
do you hug her?
Do you hug?
Yeah.
And then there's also a huge culture difference, right?
Right.
And so I had gifts prepared, but I didn't know whether to hug, to bow. I was like, I haven't bowed to anybody since I was like 2 years old, and it was my dad. And so, so we just sat down. She kind of grabbed my hands across the table and just started crying. Aww. And I didn't know what to do.
Right.
So, I just started crying.
This sounds about right.
Yeah, it's like I feel like this is a good emotion to display.
So you were adopted when you were 2, but when did she drop you off? How old?
I was about 1.5 years.
Okay, so you spent 6 months?
I was about 6 months in the orphanage.
Okay. And what about your birth dad? Was there any information given about him?
So I found out about my birth father when I was over there.
Okay.
I actually got a lot of that information from my older brother. I have a brother, same mom, same dad. That's a year older than I am.
Okay.
13 months older than me. And I talked to him a little bit about it, because his English is just a little bit better.
Yeah.
It's broken, but it's a little bit better. Yeah. And he kind of explained. And so it's a really sad story for my mom. Essentially, my birth dad, he worked in a town called Andong.
Okay.
It's about, if you were driving, probably about 2 hours east of Seoul.
Okay.
So for all the Atlanta listeners, it would be like Augusta, Georgia to Atlanta, Georgia.
Right.
2 hours. And so he was a structural engineer.
Yeah.
And he came into Seoul for a big building project that was going up, a skyrise. And so he would come over, and then in the Asian culture, family is very important. And so on the weekends, he would always go back to Andong. And when he met my mom, he told her that he had a parent that was ill, and that's why he needed to be back all the time. So they dated for about 2 years, had my older brother, and then had me. And then it kind of got a little weird, because she was like, why have I never met your family? That kind of thing. And so he was pretty much a jerk. He had an entire whole family back in Andong.
Way.
Yeah. He was married, had kids in Andong. He was just hanging out with my birth mother during the week.
Wow.
So that kind of blew up, of course.
Yeah.
And once it came out, it's a huge kind of like scarlet letter for my mom specifically, because already she's having children out of wedlock, but now it's a married man. And the socioeconomics of it all was that my dad was well educated, he made money, and then my mom was uneducated. And so it just left such a hardship for her. And so asked about kind of him a little bit. And my older brother said that they met for dinner when he was an adult after his military service.
So your older brother met your birth dad?
Yes.
Okay.
And his family.
Okay. Oh, wow.
Yeah. And basically just said it was like one of the coldest kind of interactions they ever had. And that it wouldn't be worth my time. I would be really disappointed.
Right.
And just kind of hearing what happened and what he did, it wasn't something where I was really just, looking forward or
there's
excited.
No desire you're not excited to meet him or so you're fine with never meeting him.
Yeah, totally fine with never meeting him. I kind of got what I needed, I think, from my mom.
So was your older brother put up for adoption as well?
No, my mom kept him.
Really?
Yeah. And that was the question that was always the hardest for me, because
why?
We were a year apart. Like, how did you decide? Did you flip a quarter?
Right.
I
mean, and something like that's got to and we'll get into all of this, but that's got to be the basis of a lot of emotional stress throughout the rest of your life, is always wondering why could you keep him and not me? Right.
Yeah. It was going into the conversation. I really thought I had thought of everything under the sun on why it was me. And it was the most obvious that I didn't think of course.
Which was?
I was the youngest. And so the younger you are, the better chance you have of getting adopted.
Oh, okay.
It was as simple as that. I never had put it together that way, but the younger you are, statistically, you have a better chance of being adopted, especially when you start getting into kind of pre-pubescent years and teenage years. There's almost no hope at that point.
So did that provide some emotional relief? I mean...
Yeah, it really did, because I just wasn't sure. Did she like my brother better?
Right.
Really, what was the cause? And it really came down to just almost like a T-chart, the pros and cons. And the pro was I would get adopted sooner. I had a better chance of getting adopted. My brother was older, so he was already more, I guess, kind of hands off. Like he could, and so when she was working, she was doing this alone. She felt like he could kind of entertain himself a little bit more. She wouldn't have to be quite as present. So it was really just a survival kind of decision. Yeah. And so she just kind of took me and put me up there. And, luckily just I had the greatest parents ever that decided to make me part of their family. Right.
Over here in Mississippi.
Yeah, over here in the great state of Mississippi.
So let's talk about that. Growing up as an Asian in Mississippi. I mean, we could talk about what's going on right now, but I would imagine 30 some years ago, it was very similar, dealing with some racism issues and, especially having Caucasian parents. So what's, how far back can you remember, or at what point in your life were you like, okay, I'm different. I'm different than all my friends and their parents. And how did that affect you throughout your, not even high school years, like before that, I would imagine, right?
Yeah. I knew pretty soon. Yeah. I think that kind of about the time you become self-aware, you start asking kind of those questions. And my mom and dad always just told me, it's like, your mom and your birth, they were always up front. Your birth mom, she couldn't take care of you. And we just wanted a son of our own to love and to be part of our family. And we chose you. Yeah. And that was always good enough for me. Right. But I definitely knew right away. I will say that it helped that my dad is a military veteran and that we grew up in a lot of different environments. So I had African-American friends. I had some Indian friends. White friends, obviously, right. But I think that really helped a little bit. Yeah. But I always knew that I was different, even to this day. I get reminded of that because we could go into a restaurant. I might hold the door for my mom, and they would go up to the hostess, maybe getting a table, and they would say something like, "Oh, a table for two." And it's just that kind of quick jab. It doesn't sting or anything, but it's just a quick reminder of I look nothing like them whatsoever. And so it was just the assumption that I was just being a nice guy holding the door. Right. And when we walk into the restaurant, it's like the table for two, and it's like, no, it's a table for three. Yeah. And I'm actually paying for this because, it's my mom's birthday. So take that. Right. So they named you, did they name you Chris for any particular reason? Yes. So Christopher means bearer of Christ. Okay. And my mom wanted to name me that. And then they felt like I was getting my last name from my dad, Thompson. And they wanted me to have some of my Asian heritage and not forget who I was. And so my family name in Korea is actually my middle name. Right. And so it's Christopher Thompson or Chris. But, very cool. Very cool. Yeah. So let's talk about your relationship with your parents. Obviously, you adored them. They adored you. You're very close to your mom growing up, but maybe not so much your dad until more recently? Yeah. So, my parents were great. I'd say that I got kind of my work ethic from my dad, and then I kind of got some of my empathy and kind of my heart from my mom. Emotional stuff from your mom. My dad was definitely a military guy and very straightforward. And so, I remember kind of like 8th grade, 9th grade somewhere, tried to ask him for some advice on how to ask a girl out on a date. And he was just like, just go ask her. The worst thing she can say is no. It's like, well, you're absolutely no help whatsoever.
But also very true.
Yeah. And so, my dad and I are much different in personality. Yeah. I would be running through the house, just singing away, doing something stupid or something I wasn't supposed to. And he was kind of like sitting in a chair reading a book. So we definitely didn't have that kind of talking relationship growing up. But he did everything that I think kind of his generation was supposed to do as a father, right?
Sure.
He was at every game, every practice, helping with the homework, instilling a strong work ethic, whether it was me outside mowing the grass or helping him do projects. Always there, never wanted for anything.
Financially
while we didn't grow up, rich or anything by any means, but always had food. I played a lot of sports, always has the equipment. Yeah. I had everything that I could want. But as far as just talking to him about, some more emotional things, that just wasn't a big thing. And that's where my mom came in, really taught me through a lot of things. And, it was tough. My dad was gone 6-9 months at a time for different deployments. Right. And then just growing up in Mississippi, kind of dealing with some things. It was, I'm not going to say I was an angel.
Well, we've had that conversation once or twice. So what did your mom do?
So my mom was a stay-at-home mom. So she was always there, picking me up from school. Yeah. Feeding all the neighborhood kids, reading me books at night. She, she was the just, I guess, stereotypical kind of maybe 50s, 60s type mom, just at home, always like cooking, always, dressed like a certain way, and just being a great mother.
And we say was because she passed away.
She did. I lost my mom about 2 years ago. It was February 23rd. So I had just moved back to Atlanta. I'd been back for less than a year, and then she was battling a lot of different kind of health ailments, kind of congestive heart failure, renal failure. She had really bad diabetes.
How old was she?
My mom was 75 when she passed.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So eat healthy, people.
Yeah. Take care of yourself.
Yeah. Don't eat Southern cooking all the time like my mom did, although it was delicious, the pancakes she would make.
So that's 2 years ago. So that's fresh.
Yeah. I think of my mom every day.
Yeah.
I don't think that I don't think it hurts any less. I just think you got to get accustomed to the hurt a little bit, Yeah. Big holidays, of course, come, but it's kind of the rare moments that I'm not kind of like shielded from it a little bit that really kind of hit me. Yeah. The other day, I have my good buddy Alex and his wife Chantal. I have a beautiful little girl. I love going over there. We'll watch some fights and I'll get to play with her. But it's kind of those moments where I think, this would be awesome, right? I'd like have a little girl to run around with. But then it's that kind of split second thought where like, God, my mom would love this, that I'm just not really prepared for. Yeah. That it it's fresh. It hurts quite a bit when I kind of think of, everything that's going to be missed. Like my mom getting to meet maybe, my future daughter, and then my future daughter not getting to know her grandmother and somebody that was the most influential person in my life.
Right, so. Right. But, it's carried on in you, and she instilled a lot of amazing qualities in you, and you have that to give the next generation and your friends and your family. So I've never lost a parent, but my dad lost his brother when he turned 50 years old, and I just remember seeing the pain of my cousins and what they went through and what they still go through every day. And like you said, it doesn't ever go away. It just it's different. Yeah. Right. So was you said she was sick, but was it like a sudden thing? Like, or was she kind of going downhill for a long period? Like, did you, and again, I've never been there. So it's like, how do you prepare for it? You know, it's coming, or did you not know it's coming, or?
Yeah, so she was sick for a while. She was kind of in poor health for about 2 years prior to this. And then even before that, obviously you could see the signs and some of the issues that she was having. Yeah. And so knew it was coming somewhat, but it was still a shock to me when I actually got the call from my dad. Right.
So you hadn't gone home. You didn't know it was like coming immediately.
No, I had no clue.
Okay.
It was a Friday afternoon, and I just got a call.
Yeah.
My dad was crying, and once you hear that, I just knew automatically what had just happened.
Right.
And it was just. It was a shock. 2 months before she passed, she actually had a seizure. Mm-hmm. And when she came, everything was somewhat fine afterwards. But when she came back from that, she was noticeably different. She was very forgetful. There were things that you could just tell that she wasn't kind of running on all cylinders. Mm-hmm. Sometimes when you talk to her. It wasn't bad to where she didn't know who I was.
Okay.
But even then, after that, I was still thinking that she was going to be around for a while,
right?
Certainly a couple more years, that kind of thing. And even with all of that, even like specific timelines put in front of my father and I when she was going through some of the heart stuff, mm-hmm. It was still just a punch in the gut when it finally happened. So
yeah. So did you end up going home and spending some time with your dad?
Yeah. So I left. I had just got
and they're still in Mississippi at this point, correct?
Yes. My mom and dad were still in Mississippi. So I drove all the way home to Mississippi, which is about 5 hours away mm-hmm. from me. Helped my dad with some things, all the, what would she like to wear, that kind of thing. And then I actually drove all the way back to Atlanta and then drove from there up to kind of the Nashville area because that's where my mom was from.
Oh, okay.
And so drove all the way back to pick up some things that I needed, like a suit and things that I just ran out the door and didn't bring, and drove up there. And then we got the funeral arrangements mm-hmm. together. And after that, spent a week or so with Dad, just kind of, I believe it was a week, something like that, just with him.
Right.
And they were married for 39 years.
Wow.
Yeah, so it was a big shock to him and just his everyday life. But losing his best friend was certainly tough. So I was trying to be there a little bit more. And
you're trying to grieve your mother and also support your father.
Yeah.
Right. Those are big shoes to fill.
Yeah, it was a lot, but I kind of grew up with a lot on my shoulders.
Right.
Probably more than I should have, honestly.
Right.
And which kind of leads me into, just kind of why I am the way I am.
Yeah.
Some of the things that I've had to deal with. So
yeah. Well, I would imagine too, being adopted and knowing that this woman wanted you more than anything in the world, right? To lose that person, I mean, that's just got to be incredibly emotional and like you said, something to think about every day. But I'm wondering kind of what you do to keep her memory alive and to keep it so it doesn't spin you into a negative space, which it, probably did for a while. Yeah. And then how it also changed your relationship with your dad.
Yeah. So the answer to your first question, I just try to keep her memory alive. It's something that I just try to be the best guy that I can, someone that she would still be proud of. On my first date in high school, I had kind of forgotten my wallet, and so I had picked up my date and came back to the house real quick. And so, of course, I invite my date in to meet my mom real quick as I grab my wallet and we're walking out. And she had actually, I guess when we were getting in the car to leave, she had looked out of the window and was watching everything. And, I go on my date, get home a little bit later. She's waiting up and she's like, "Hey, how did it go?" And she goes, "Well, why didn't you open the door for her?" I didn't open the door. I just let her get in. And I was 14, 15 years old.
Right.
And I was just like, well, she's got arms. And that was not an answer. And I just never will forget that my mom, I think she was prepared for it. Like, cause I don't know where the hell the broom came from.
Yeah.
But there was a broom in her hand, like almost immediately. And and she just kind of hit me with it. And I was like, "What are you doing?" And she just kept hitting me. So like at that point it was kind of funny. And so my mom, who's not graceful at all.
Yeah.
Like I just never will forget. I was like literally running out our front door and she was kind of like waddle chasing me with the broom and just laughing the entire time. She's like, "We got to teach you how to do this."
Aww.
And, it's still something that I just sticks with me. Like trying to be someone that my mom would be proud of is really just that. And one day I would really like to adopt at some point.
Really?
And I think that would be something I'd really like to give back to because I
domestically, like an international adoption, or
it really doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You know, I just think passing that along.
Yeah.
If I could start a legacy for generations, it would be to give love to children that might not, otherwise have it.
Sure.
And that's just something that's always been kind of sticking with me. And then Holt, if anybody is a Facebook friend or something, I'm always kind of posting different things about adoption.
Right.
Being an advocate for that. If you have questions, certainly reach out.
Yeah.
I have a friend that, they had adopted, and I've kind of talked to them a little bit about things. And in today's world, whether you know it or not, people, they are having some trouble sometimes conceiving and going through that process. And I've talked to a couple of couples before on just what it's like and some of the challenges that you might face and things. And so it's something that I really want to pass on, not only to maybe my family later on, but anyone that might have interest in kind of going down that road.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
And then, after all of this happened with your mom, I think you mentioned to me your relationship with your dad kind of started to change. Yeah.
It was kind of an eye-opener for him. I remember I'd came home. It was my freshman year of college, actually. And I was helping him with a project, and this huge piece of plywood flew off of his truck. And we had turned around to get it, and this guy just random on the road, I guess, decided he was going to take this piece of wood. So my dad got out of the truck and was like, "Hey, that's mine." He said it a little bit more aggressively than that. And so he got in the truck, and I was like, "What'd you say to the guy?" And he just goes, "Well, that's my effing piece of wood." And I remember my dad had never cussed like that in front of me before. And I was just so shocked.
Yeah.
And I just started laughing and being like, "Dad, you just dropped the F-bomb." And he started laughing. And like, I know it sounds crazy, but that is literally the one moment where our relationship changed. I think that for the first time, he kind of just thought of me as like a man versus his son and just someone he had to protect a little bit. And so he started to open up at that point, and we could have like more in-depth conversations, whether it was politics or what's going on in the world, what was going on with me, school, career, whatever. And then when I actually lost my mom, that's when things really changed, because now when we talk, it's like every time we hang up, he's like, "I love you." I could probably count 2 times, maybe 3
before
that, going from 2 to 18, that my dad said, "I love you."
Yeah.
And even, a couple more times after, the incident with the wood.
Right.
But after my mom, it's literally every time now. Like, he's just like, "I love you, son. I hope you have a good week." And, I'll talk to you, later on or something. So really changed. I confide in him a lot more than I used to, and kind of ask his advice on things.
Right.
And just let him know that he's important to me. And so it's if one positive thing came out of my mom passing, it would be that my dad and I have grown extremely close. And hopefully we were planning on going out to San Diego, pre-COVID. And so hopefully get to travel a little bit with him and stuff.
Yeah.
So that's the one positive thing I can say that came out of my mom passing.
That's great. And he's retired, obviously.
Oh, hell no.
Is he still working?
Oh, yeah. I try to get him to retire all the time. But he works for a Navy contractor now.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And, I wish he would retire and get a little bit closer to us.
Yeah.
Or to me.
Yeah.
But it keeps him mentally aware, and it gives him purpose. Yep. And I think that's, it keeps him busy, and it's not just sitting at home twiddling his thumbs and realizing that mom's not there. It really keeps him active and doing things. And so as long as he wants to continue to do it, I'll be supportive of it.
Yeah.
But he's 72 now, and he's still just chugging along. He picks up charity projects to build houses and decks all the time. He just loves to be active. Yeah. And he's always been such a strong worker and doing things right. So, wow. Yeah, one day, maybe.
39 years, one day, maybe. Well, let's just go there. So you were married at one point.
I was.
How old were you?
Oh gosh, I was 27.
Okay.
When I got married.
Where did you live when you got married?
So we were in Mississippi.
Okay.
I met my ex-wife in college. She is, she's wonderful. She really is.
Yeah.
I still remember the first time I met her.
Yeah.
What she was wearing and where it was.
That's so cute.
Yeah. It was someone that I was instantly attracted to, someone that I instantly kind of gravitated toward. It was funny throughout college. We were either dating someone else or, just how you kind of like just go by each other. You're around each other all the time, and the timing wasn't there. And then eventually it was. And so, yeah, we dated for a couple years, and then, I was just like, hey, I want to marry this person.
Yeah.
And so I got married, and we kind of had a little adventure. We lived in several different places in the U.S. We spent some time in Mississippi.
Okay.
We lived in Atlanta for 5 years. Then we went out to Denver for a couple years, ended up in Charlotte. And then unfortunately, it didn't work out.
Yeah.
And so we didn't. And so we separated, and that's when I moved back to Atlanta.
So how long were you actually married for?
A little over 7 years.
Okay. All right. So came back to Atlanta, wanted to kind of start fresh and just kind of be your own person, right? But I think, you and I have talked about this before. It does something, especially to a male psyche, going through divorce. And did your mom die before y'all got divorced, or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So she died.
No, I'm sorry. She had died. I'd literally been back to Atlanta for about 2 months when I moved back when she passed. So we were already separated at the time.
You were separated, and then your mom dies, and your emotional journey kind of is whirlwind, right?
Yeah. 2016-17 was the easiest way I can say it's the worst, like kind of 12 months ever, right? Failed in my marriage, lost my mom, and just very depressed and unhappy. That's the only way I can put it. Was really doing a lot of soul searching at the time. And so, it was a dark time for me there. I've kind of dealt with some depression type issues all the time. One thing I didn't mention about my mom is that she was actually schizophrenic.
Really?
Yeah. And so, I mentioned that my dad was gone at long times and that I had kind of a lot on my shoulders. So during high school is when the symptoms really started to become very prevalent. She would think that like cameras were like following her in stores, that people were out to get her, people were going to take me away. So I think it was like some of her worst fears just really kind of coming to the forefront. Yeah. And it was always geared towards someone was taking me away.
Really?
Yeah. So I think it really played on her kind of core fear that maybe she maybe was kind of an inadequate mom, you know, which I think every parent feels that way at some point. And then 2 was that me being adopted, that there was always a chance that either I might want to kind of go find my family and wouldn't need them anymore, or that someone else would try to take me away. Right. And so, dealt with that. It was, so I was 16, 17 years old. My dad's gone for 9 months in Turkey. And I'm trying to get in touch with him. Like, Dad, Mom's going, like, I don't know what to do.
Did he did he warn you that this could happen? Did you even know?
No. This kind of came out of nowhere.
Okay.
Like,
so he hadn't really experienced it before.
No. Like, she was kind of a little bit, we could tell something was a little bit different.
Yeah.
But we also, you just never think that's it, right? Like she might say something kind of offhand. It's like, man, I feel like that person's following me. Like, yeah, you hear it, but at the same time, you're just like, she's
right. It's like a fleeting moment
between my dad and I. Yes, I support women's rights, but I was just like, she's just been a woman.
Such a jerk.
Yeah, I know. So, it's like, it's just your mom, right? And so, we started to hear some things, but certainly never expected that. And so I dealt with a whole lot. I remember that my dad actually sent me away for Christmas for 2 weeks to some friend's house down in New Orleans. And when I got back, my dad had committed her.
Really?
Yeah. So she was in a facility for about 2-3 months while they got her kind of regulated on some medications and things like that.
Okay.
But he didn't want me to be a part of that. So as a sophomore in high school, I literally was sent away. I don't know.
He didn't tell you why?
No.
Just like, you're going away?
He said that like, hey, your mom and I need to go to the doctor, do some things.
Okay.
And I just think that it would be a good time for you to go visit your buddy Jimmy. Mm-hmm. And I'm just thinking as a 14 or 15-year-old, it's like, oh yeah, Coach Tommy is awesome, and he'll probably take us to Bourbon Street, and I can probably see some boobs. If I'm just honest, like as a 14-year-old. So I didn't really think anything of it because we had been talking about me going down there to visit anyway. And so we went down there, or I went down there. I took the train by myself, which was kind of cool. Uh-huh. And it was just like kind of right after Christmas. So I spent New Year's down there. And I got back and I was like, hey, where's mom? And he was like, well, she's going to be staying at this facility. Sat me down and explained it all. And like most people that deal with medication and that type of thing, she would have like good times and bad times. And it usually relegated around the kind of, I don't know, false belief that, hey, I don't need the medication anymore. I'm getting better. And so she was good for a little bit and then it would be bad. And dad would do his best, but you know, he was still active at the time. And so he would be deployed. Right. And it would just be mom and I, and you know, there were.
So do you feel like this huge weight to take care of her and look out for her and play the husband type of role in very much being a son at the same time?
Oh yeah. When I went away for college, it was even worse then because, she had diabetes, she had these kind of mental health issues going on. And I am just kind of a straightforward person. Like, if you ask my advice, I'll just tell you what I really think.
Yes, I know that very well.
Yeah, I'll definitely tell you. It might not be what you want to hear, but I will tell you what I think.
It's one thing I can say about you is you're brutally honest.
I will tell you what I think, and but it frustrates me when it's not even like an opinion. It's just a fact, right? If you have, diabetes or you're overweight, things like that, you need to monitor your diet, right? Right. And my mom would never do that. And I would get so frustrated at her because like, don't you want to be around? Don't you want to see like the rest of my life? Like, I feel like you can eat a salad. And so in college, it was just really hard. And I just always, and my dad was never very vocal about it. He always just kind of let her do what she wanted, was kind of sat back. And I would just get so frustrated with both of them because it's like, guys, it's not that hard. Dad, you need to like tell her, like, I don't care if you have to count her pills every morning like I did in high school at 17, like counting her pills to make sure she's taking them every couple of days kind of thing. Like, you can do the same thing. And he's like, no, she's fine. She's an adult. She can do it. And it was just super frustrating.
Well, it's frustrating when you love someone so much, but they don't want to take responsibility for their life. Yeah. And that's the hardest part about any sort of mental health issue. It's like you can't want it more for someone else than they want it for themselves. Yeah. Right. At the end of the day, it's their life.
Yeah, I had two choices. I could move back and really micromanage the situation, or I could continue to grow and to live my life and to kind of progress that way. And so I chose the latter. Yeah. And it was just, I felt like I didn't realize this at the time, but I just had so much kind of weight and responsibility on my shoulders, or at least I felt like it because, getting mom sometimes to doctor's appointments because maybe my dad was gone for 2 weeks for training and, doing that kind of thing. It was just a lot. And so kind of coming out of that, my freshman and sophomore year of college, that's where my depression really started to set in. I remember talking to a doctor and he gave me like Zoloft, right? It was very family practice. Here, just take a pill.
Just take a pill.
And go on about your way. And later on, it was really, I think, kind of, I don't know, probably year one into my marriage that it really hit me.
So this is like 5-6 years after that, right? Yeah.
Like, I kind of managed it, but at the time I was so, I was distracting myself from so many things. I was going out a lot, doing the typical college scene. And it really just distracted me a whole lot from issues. I got out of that. I was very kind of career driven, like oriented, working. And, I had some big things going on. I was getting married, doing all of this stuff. But after you have time to sit in your thoughts and it's, where you're in, that's where things started to pop up, right? From a depression standpoint. It was super tough. Went back to the doctor. eventually got kind of diagnosed kind of with the whole clinical depression thing. And even then, I'm such a hypocrite. I'm over here talking about my mom. But see, I went down the same cycle, even knowing it, right? So the doctor had prescribed some medicine, some things I should be doing. And, I would do it for a little bit, and then I would get off of it. And my marriage certainly suffered because of that.
Sure.
I definitely wasn't the husband my wife deserved. A lot of, there were times that I just wasn't. I know that.
Yeah.
And it got bad. Like I remember specifically when my wife and I were living in Atlanta the first time. I like guns. Go Second Amendment. And I literally gave her one, and I was like, just hide it. I don't want to know where it is, because I was having some bad thoughts.
Really?
Yeah. I told her to hide it, and she hid it, and she was like, she's in the healthcare profession. She's a nurse practitioner.
Right.
She's like, you're going to see somebody immediately, right? Yeah. And so was having some talk therapy, doing some visualization type stuff, certainly shifting the narrative on how my thoughts were coming to me instead of saying typical things like, this is the worst day ever, saying this is the best day ever, and why, and doing a lot of that. But it was certainly really bad during that time, and had some medicine. You would use it for a little bit, but then I'd get off, because for you people that don't know, usually antidepressants, I mean, from a kind of just sex life standpoint, it sucks. Like, there's some side effects there. And it just, it's kind of just emasculating as a guy, right? And it just wasn't great. And then after the divorce, it was even worse because, to your point, it really like divorce is like probably, at least in my opinion for a guy, is really like your probably worst defeat that you're going to really have. 'Cause there's something about the, at least idea from a societal standpoint of go to work, make a great family life, be a good husband, do all this. And if you can't do that, then it's kind of almost in your head a little bit. It's like, well, I'm less of a man, right?
You feel like a failure.
Yeah. Your biggest failure by far.
Yeah.
And just emasculated. And then all the thoughts start creeping in of, what did I do wrong? Am I not good enough? Like, all of these kind of things. And it was such a dark time. Luckily, my good friend Froy at the time, he recognized some things, and we were friends, and he let me live with them, which was really like one of my saving graces. Because he would check in on me and make sure that I was good. And while I might not have always been receptive to it all the time, I always appreciated it. And I do remember, though, I was sitting in his carriage house. I lived out there for about 6 months after the divorce. And I mean, like, not a lot of people know this, but literally had a gun in my mouth at one point.
Really?
Yeah, like I was crying, just really just couldn't find, the light to get out.
Yeah.
And I wish I had like some really great story, kind of like yours, like, a phone rang or something. But I literally just, I'm thankful for it now, but I was just too scared, right?
Yeah.
Because I grew up in this kind of religious household a little bit, and I just couldn't get past like, is there something else out there? Like, I don't want to go to like hell, like, and it was really this, like, is my pain going to be worse? Right. Because I couldn't imagine it at the time that it would be worse, but I could also, it was like, but if I'm wrong, then it will just end. Like, what's the point? So that time was just a horrible time for me post-divorce, but there were signs all along the way.
Sure. Did you talk to somebody, and I'm a huge believer that the way we are as adults and a lot of the emotional things that we have going on now, it stems from our childhood, 1000%. Did you ever talk to somebody, or do you think there is an element of not being good enough because you were put up for adoption?
100%.
Yeah. You talked to somebody about that?
Yes, I did. After that, I started seeing a therapist pretty regularly, like once a week regular. And even now I have like kind of like monthly check-ins just to kind of make sure that I'm not slipping. Luckily, I have a good group of core people that check in on me, and if I do start to slip, they kind of remind me. But so I went and talked to somebody, and one thing to kind of circle back to my marriage is when I got married originally, I told my wife that I didn't want kids. I was 100% certain before we got married. Then during our marriage counseling, all of this, like, I don't want kids, and that was something that we butted heads with, a little bit. Because
why didn't you want kids?
Well, at the time, I just said that, like, I'm selfish. I just want to travel, do all these things,
which is fair. I'm always curious why guys say that.
But when I really thought about it years later, was that I was just really scared. Yeah. Because I talked to all of my friends and people, and like, Chris, you'd be a great dad. Once they're here, you're gonna love them, and you're never gonna know this type of love, right? Right. And every time somebody says that to me, without a doubt, the first thing I always think of is that that's not really true. Yeah. Like, I have a biological dad that wants zero to do with me, and yes, my biological mom, she loves me, but she still put me up for adoption, right? Right. And so I think I was really, really scared. Actually, I know I was really, really scared of having this person and then just really resenting them for even being there. And I never wanted someone to go through some of the things that I went through, right? Like, I wanted to be a loving father, but this whole idea that, oh, trust me, you're going to love them. Like, I just never bought into it. Yeah. And I wasn't mentally mature enough at the time to realize that's what it was. Yeah. But so I just was like, oh, I just want to travel. I'd rather have a Ferrari than put a kid through college, like that kind of thing. And my wife was okay with it at the beginning, and then of course she changed. Yeah. And deservedly so. And so for the longest time, I wasn't mature enough to understand that need. Yeah. I was, my thought was, I told you this. Yeah. What are you talking about? You're changing your mind. Right. We had agreed on this, right? Like, I never changed my mind on anything in life. And she actually sat me down one day crying and just told me why she needed to be a mom. Aww. And she actually changed my mind. Really? She really did. She was just telling me, like, all the things that, like, why. And I just remember just being there, like, you love your wife, right? How can you deprive her of something like this? Right. And, there's some emotional baggage there that we'll get through it together, right? And so she changed my mind.
Well, hopefully she understood where you were coming from too, because you're coming from a very different place than most men in America.
Yeah, I wish I could say that I was probably articulate enough at the time to really kind of express it, but I think that during that time I was still fighting, going back and forth and fighting a long way. I kind of actually, it wasn't so much. I say she changed my mind, and she did, but it was also kind of relenting a little bit. Like, all right, well, if you say you love your wife, you're going to do this for her, right? It wasn't so much that at the time I was just like, oh, I want kids. Right. It was only after kind of like post-divorce that I was like, okay, I kind of want kids now.
But I think that's a big lesson is, like, if you're going to bring a human being into this world, you really do have to be ready. And especially now with so much going on, not that you're ever going to be 100% ready, but you have to realize that in your own time and deal with a lot of your own issues before you can be ready to raise another human being.
Oh yeah. And I can barely raise myself.
So obviously, going through severe depression and having a gun in your mouth, I mean, those are very, nothing ever traumatic happened to you, right? Like, I was talking to somebody the other day about this, and a lot of people that I've had on my podcast, they've had huge trauma in that, there was sexual abuse or there was this and that. And like, you're like, I don't have an interesting story. I'm like, your story is not that it's traumatic, but it's so different yet so relatable, because these issues of being adopted and then, growing up in rural Mississippi, like, maybe people can't relate to those specifics, but they can relate to the emotions that have surfaced from some of these issues. And I think that's kind of the biggest point with my podcast is that we can all relate on an emotional level.
Yeah.
So you just being open and being willing to share that is huge. And I want to know, you saw therapists and was there something that made you take the gun out of your mouth?
Just that I was scared, honestly. Like I wish there was something that I could say that was a little bit more inspiring.
No, not at all.
It was just that I was scared.
Yeah.
But as far as my story, you're right. I don't think that I'm that interesting, but I think the one takeaway from it is that I honestly believe that you don't have to have something super traumatic to happen to you to kind of go down or to deal with depression or mental anxiety, whatever, the mental stigma might be,
right.
Or to have just a tough day, right? Like there's nothing out there that says it has to be some big traumatic moment.
Yeah.
And I feel like sometimes people feel ashamed a little bit that I'm talking about this and person A has this just kind of horrific type background.
Right.
And I'm saying this kind of the same thing, from a diagnosis standpoint. And all it is for me is, I want to be a size 2 or, I wish I had, 8-pack abs or I just don't like my job. Right. But I think that the majority of everyday people, when they're feeling like that, I mean, that's what it is. It's like things that we don't think are a big deal, but it's kind of that idea that it's not a big deal that doesn't make us deal with it.
Yeah.
And it just continually compounds. And then next thing you know, you're kind of spiraling.
Right.
And that's when the quicksand starts and it's really hard to get out. So.
I always say this. I felt, there were several lows in my life. And I remember thinking there's no reason, especially when it first kind of started in high school. I literally had everything a 16-year-old could want. Mm-hmm. But I remember feeling bad about feeling bad. Mm-hmm. I had friends going through real trauma and they were showing up every day and smiling. And here I am with 2 loving parents and a car given to me and homecoming, like all these things that from the outside looked like I should be the happiest girl in the world. But whatever it was, from my childhood and then obviously probably hormones and genetics, I felt so ashamed for feeling bad and not being able to control it. Right. Mm-hmm. So there's this whole stigma and this embarrassment that comes with depression. And I think the more that we talk about it in everyday life and in not huge traumatic events that might spiral you in, but just things like emotions, the more that we talk about that, the more it will be talked about and the more that people will actually be able to deal with it. I wish I had this to listen to all those years ago, and especially coming from a guy and this whole sense of masculinity and we've got to be the provider and we've got to, do all the things. You feel even worse when you can't do those things. Right.
Oh, 100%. I think that after my divorce, I actually, I was struggling at work because I wasn't sleeping at all. And I remember there was a certain conversation I was having and I wanted to say at the time that I'm just mentally not okay right now. But I felt almost ashamed saying that as a male. As a man. I feel and I'm not trying to be biased here, but I feel like a woman would be a little bit more accepted. Yeah. Whether that's a double-edged sword or not. But,
it is.
But more accepted being I'm just not mentally okay.
Right.
But I felt for me, I just had to say that the divorce is hitting me hard.
Right.
But I couldn't say that I'm mentally not okay. I'm really depressed right now. I'm having trouble concentrating. Yeah. And, I'm just not performing my duties as well. So I 100% agree with you. I remember specifically thinking that at the time that I had to really craft what I'm about to say in more of a manly or kind of masculine way versus just being able to say what I want and being guys, I'm depressed. I'm not doing well.
Right. Right. And honestly, once you say that, isn't it so freeing? It's a weight off your shoulders. And I was talking to one guest a couple of weeks ago. It's I have no problem sharing my story because there's nothing else that anyone can say about me that I haven't already thought about myself. I've thought the worst things about myself and it's so freeing to just be open and honest and help other people that are really struggling. that it gives me such a sense of purpose. And I think you'll find that, you know, putting this out there, you might feel the same way. And just knowing that, like, okay, there it is. And either people are going to love you regardless or not. And those aren't the people you want in your life anyways, right?
100%.
Especially for a guy.
Yeah, 100%. You know, I kept a lot of this to myself. I would say probably into my like kind of mid 30s, really. I'll actually go a step further and say that the divorce was probably the catalyst to where I kind of started talking about it more, mainly because I just couldn't hide it anymore. Right. But I do think it's important that you have a close group of people that understand and support you. I can't tell you that how many times it's not anything serious, but like maybe I just wasn't all there.
Yeah.
And you know, my friends understanding where I was and then still being supportive, but letting me kind of have a little bit of space as well and not just piling onto it. Right. Because like, I don't want to feel bad. I already feel bad, but I don't want to feel worse by saying, yeah, I told you I'd go to dinner on Thursday, but I can't do it. Right.
Or I don't want to do it.
Like I would much rather just stay here and eat Ben and Jerry's. Yeah. And so, you know, having that understanding between your friends, I think was a huge step forward for me. Once I felt comfortable enough to be like, you know, like, Josh, I just don't feel like it this weekend. Man. Like, you guys have fun. If you need me, call me. But, you know, I think I'm just going to stay in, read, watch some TV, and just kind of cuddle with the dog, you know? And once I felt it was like, I was amazed at how much pressure was lifted once I could just be honest and say that versus trying to, you know, there's all that anxiety of like, what excuse can I tell them?
Right. Well, you're fearful of the judgment.
Yeah.
Right. Like, or not leveling up to what your guy friends are doing.
Right. You know, and it's just, it was just so much worse trying to think of ways to get out of things instead of just being honest and be like, guys, I don't have it.
And now once you understand yourself, you can recognize that in another friend and you can be the one to say, hey, it's okay, dude, or check in on them or whatever. And that's how I feel about my life moving forward, is I've been given a gift and an opportunity to help other people and take away the judgment that I for so long felt, and now be able to kind of pass that on. So I think understanding us as an individual is what we have to do first. And then from there, really using that, even though it wasn't a great experience for many years of my life, but being able to use that to kind of help other people. So I'm so glad you agreed to share your story. I think it's incredible. And I really hope that it's helpful to you too. Thank you for listening to this episode of the 6 Feet Above podcast. I'm your host, Megan Armstrong. Subscribe so you never miss another episode, as a new episode is released every Tuesday. And if you're enjoying the series, please give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcast. Follow the show on Instagram at 6 Feet Above Podcast to keep the conversation going, and feel free to reach out to me directly at Megstagram11. This episode is a product of Audiographies, produced by Megan Armstrong and Denora Sepolia, edited by Jacob Smolian, and the music is by Keenan Willis. Funded by yours truly. I'll see you next time.